The command deck of the Devourer's Pride hummed with nervous energy. 12 alien species, each representing a different faction of the Galactic Dominion, stood watching their view screens with what could only be described as professional concern. Well, as professional as one could be when watching their most feared warlord potentially get embarrassed by a single human. Commander Vex Tormund, a towering Krillian with 4 arms and skin that shifted between purple and gray, depending on his mood, currently displayed the lovely shade of, "Oh no, this might go badly." His second-in-command, Lieutenant Zara Voss, a sleek Nexari with silver scales and eyes like liquid mercury, tapped her claws against her tablet with the rhythm of someone trying very hard not to say, "I told you so." "Sir," Zara began, her voice carrying that particular tone that subordinates use when they're about to deliver news that nobody wants to hear. "The human has established position at the 3-kilometer mark." Vex's mood skin flickered to an even darker shade of purple. 3 kilometers? That's quite far, isn't it? "For most species, yes, sir. For humans." She paused, consulting her data pad. "Well, their snipers have recorded kills at distances exceeding 2 miles on their home planet. 3 kilometers is well within their documented capabilities." A chittering laugh came from the corner of the bridge. Tactical Officer Brix Nomak, a mantis-like Sethrak with compound eyes that could track 17 different objects simultaneously, found this whole situation hilarious. "Oh, this is rich. Warlord Gorth has never faced anything beyond 500 meters. His entire reputation is built on close-quarters brutality and intimidation tactics." "Quiet, Nomak," Vex snapped, though his tone lacked real authority. Truth was, everyone on the bridge was thinking the same thing. The human in question, one Captain Marcus Kane, had volunteered for what the Dominion called trial by combat after his ship had been captured 3 days ago. Standard procedure dictated that any warrior could challenge the local warlord to single combat for freedom. Most species used this as a negotiation tactic, fighting to first blood or submission. Humans, apparently, played by different rules. "Incoming transmission from Warlord Gorth," Communications Officer Yela Frost announced. The blue-skinned Azurian's tentacles danced across her console with practiced efficiency. "He's asking why the human hasn't moved closer." Vex rubbed his forehead with 2 of his 4 hands. "Put him through." The view screen crackled to life, revealing the massive form of Warlord Gorth. 8 feet tall, covered in bone-like protrusions and possessing a temperament that made angry bears look cuddly, Gorth was the Dominion's most successful ground commander. His record was impressive: 732 victories, 0 defeats, and a collection of enemy skulls that required its own storage bay. "Tormund!" Gorth's voice boomed through the speakers, causing several bridge officers to wince. "What trickery is this? The human coward hides at an impossible distance. Tell him to come forward and fight with honor." "Ah, Warlord," Vex began carefully. "The human seems to believe that 3 kilometers is an acceptable combat range." "Absurd! No weapon can strike accurately at such distance. Is this some human jest?" Lieutenant Voss stepped forward, her diplomatic training kicking in. "Sir, perhaps we should review the human's equipment manifest. Their weapon technology might be more advanced than we initially assessed." Gorth's laugh was like grinding stone. "I have seen their primitive gunpowder weapons, crude metal tubes that make noise and smoke. My armor can deflect their pathetic projectiles." On the surface below, Captain Kane adjusted his position behind a rocky outcrop. The human was remarkably calm for someone about to face a legendary warlord. Through their long-range cameras, The bridge crew could see him methodically checking his equipment with the kind of precision that spoke of extensive training. "What exactly is he carrying down there?" Vex asked, squinting at the screen. Technical specialist Riva Blackstone, a cybernetically enhanced Vortan, pulled up the equipment scan. "According to our sensors, it's designated as a Barrett M82A1. Length, approximately 4 feet. Weight, 30 pounds. Ammunition type, .50 caliber." "That seems excessive," Zara observed. "Oh, it gets better," Reva continued, her mechanical eye whirring as it focused on additional data. "This particular model is designed for what humans call anti-materiel purposes. It's capable of disabling armored vehicles." The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of life support systems. "Did you say vehicles?" Vex asked quietly. "Yes, sir. Light armored vehicles, to be specific." Warlord Gorth chose that moment to begin his traditional pre-battle ritual. A thunderous war cry followed by an intimidating display of strength. He lifted a boulder the size of a small shuttle and hurled it 50 meters, then drew his massive warhammer and began pounding the ground hard enough to register on their seismic sensors. "He's quite enthusiastic," Zara commented. "That's one word for it," Brix chittered. All 17 of his compound eyes focused on different screens showing various angles of the impending combat. Captain Kane, meanwhile, had settled into a prone firing position. The human's movements were economical, practiced. He adjusted something on his weapon scope, checked wind direction with a small device, and then simply waited. "Fascinating," murmured Dr. Kaya Thorne, the ship's xenobiologist. The elderly Altarian had been studying human behavior since their first contact 6 months ago. "Notice the human's heart rate on the bioscanner. It's actually decreasing." "Decreasing?" Vex looked at the medical readouts in confusion. "Most species experience elevated heart rates during combat preparation." "Humans are different," Dr. Thorne explained, her aged voice carrying the weight of extensive research. "Their elite warriors enter what they call the zone, a state of enhanced focus where physiological responses actually calm. It's quite remarkable, really." On the surface, Warlord Gorth had finished his intimidation display and was now charging across the battlefield. His massive legs carried him forward at surprising speed for something so large. Dust clouds kicked up behind him as he covered ground with the determination of a freight train. "Distance to target, 2,800 meters, and closing," Tactical Officer Nomak reported with barely contained glee. Warlord's current speed indicates approximately 4 minutes until contact range. 4 minutes? Vex's mood skin shifted to an interesting shade of green. "What's the human doing?" All eyes turned to the screen showing Captain Kane. The human had made one final adjustment to his scope and was now perfectly still. His breathing had slowed to an almost meditative rhythm. "He's calculating," Dr. Thorne observed. "Humans have an unusual capacity for mathematical computation under stress. Wind speed, bullet drop, target velocity, atmospheric pressure. They're processing variables that would challenge our best tactical computers." Lieutenant Voss frowned at her readings. "Our atmospheric conditions aren't exactly Earth standard. How can he possibly account for the differences?" "That's what makes this so interesting," Dr. Thorne replied. "Humans adapt remarkably quickly to new environments. They've been studying our atmospheric data since their capture." Warlord Gorth was now at 2,500 meters, and still charging. His war cries echoed across the barren landscape, a sound that had terrified countless enemies across dozens of star systems. The bone protrusions on his armor gleamed in the alien sun as he ran, every step a testament to raw, unstoppable power. Captain Kane exhaled slowly and squeezed the trigger. The sound was different. Not the loud bang that galactic forces had come to expect from human weapons, but a sharp crack that seemed to split the air itself. The muzzle flash was brief but brilliant, and then everything went very quiet. For exactly 2.7 seconds, nothing seemed to happen. Warlord Gorth continued his charge, still bellowing his war cry, still covering ground at impressive speed. Then physics caught up with him. The impact was, well, spectacular, didn't quite cover it. The high-velocity round struck Gorth's center mass with enough force to lift his 8-foot frame completely off the ground. The sound of the impact carried clearly across the 3 kilometers. A wet, metallic crunch that made several bridge officers wince in sympathy. Warlord Gorth, terror of 7-star systems and collector of enemy skulls, performed an elegant backward somersault before, landing in a heap 20 meters from his original position. The bridge of the Devourer's Pride was dead silent. "Medical scan," Vex whispered. Technical specialist Blackstone's mechanical eye whirred frantically. "Massive trauma to center torso. Armor penetration complete. Multiple internal injuries. He's—" She paused, checking the readings again. "He's still alive, but barely." "Still alive?" Lieutenant Voss sounded genuinely surprised. "After that impact?" "Gorth is remarkably durable," Dr. Thorne noted clinically, "though I suspect he won't be participating in any more combat trials for quite some time." On the surface, Captain Kane was already packing up his equipment with the same methodical precision he'd shown in setting up. No celebration, no victory dance, just a professional completing a job. "Incoming transmission from the human," Communications Officer Frost announced. "Put him through," Vex said, his voice barely audible. Captain Kane's face appeared on the screen. He was surprisingly young-looking for someone who had just taken down the Dominion's most feared warrior. "Commander Tormund, I believe the terms of the trial by combat have been satisfied. Warlord Gorth has been defeated, though he'll recover with proper medical attention." Vex stared at the human for a long moment. "Captain Kane, that was... How did you—" 3 kilometers isn't particularly challenging for this type of shot, Commander. Standard engagement range for anti-materiel weapons is actually much further." Kane shouldered his weapon with casual ease. "I've made confirmed kills at twice this distance during the Martian conflict." "Twice this distance," Vex repeated numbly. "Yes, sir. Though I should mention, your atmospheric conditions here actually make long-range shots easier than Earth standard. Lower gravity, thinner air, reduces bullet drop significantly." Lieutenant Voss leaned forward. "Captain, if you don't mind me asking, what exactly did you do before your capture?" Kane's expression didn't change. "Marine sniper, 4th Battalion. Served 3 tours in the Outer Colony Wars before joining the exploration fleet." He paused. "I've been hunting things a lot meaner than Warlord Gorth since I was 18 years old." The implications of that statement sank in slowly across the bridge crew. This wasn't some desperate amateur who'd gotten lucky. This was a professional killer who'd been fighting wars since before most of the bridge crew had been born. "There's something else," Kane continued conversationally. "I noticed several other ships in your fleet. If any other warlords want to try their luck at trial by combat, I'm happy to accommodate them. Though I should warn you, I brought plenty of ammunition." The bridge crew exchanged glances. In the background, medical teams were rushing to attend to Warlord Gorth, who was making weak, groaning sounds that suggested he might actually survive the encounter. "Captain," Vex began slowly, "perhaps we could discuss alternative arrangements for your release." Kane smiled, and for the first time since the combat began, He looked genuinely pleased. "I thought you might see it that way, Commander. I'm sure we can work something out." As the transmission ended, the bridge remained quiet except for the soft humming of instruments and the distant sound of medical shuttles launching toward the surface. Finally, Tactical Officer Nomak broke the silence with a low, chittering laugh. "Well, that's definitely going in my combat analysis reports. Human defeats legendary Warlord at impossible range using primitive projectile weapon. The High Command is going to think I'm fabricating data." "They're not going to believe any of this," Lieutenant Voss agreed. "A single human, one shot, 3 kilometers. It's like something out of a tactical simulation." Dr. Thorne was busy reviewing the sensor data from the engagement. "Actually, this provides fascinating insights into human military doctrine. They don't fight the same way we do. Where we rely on energy weapons, shields, and armor, they've perfected the art of kinetic projectiles to a degree we never considered possible." "Kinetic weapons are primitive," technical specialist Blackstone protested. "Any civilization with proper energy shielding can—" "Can they?" Dr. Thorne interrupted. "Look at our shield readings during the impact. The human's projectile passed through our defensive screens without even registering. It wasn't blocked, deflected, or slowed. Our shields are designed for energy weapons, not physical projectiles traveling at hypersonic velocities." Commander Vex felt a cold realization settling in his stomach. "Doctor, are you suggesting that human weapons could penetrate our standard defensive systems?" "I'm suggesting that we may have fundamentally misunderstood human military capabilities," Dr. Thorne replied. "We've been thinking of them as a primitive species with crude technology. But what if they're not primitive? What if they're just specialized?" The thought hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Every ship in the Dominion fleet relied on energy shields for protection. If humans had developed weapons specifically designed to bypass such defenses— "Sir," Communications Officer Frost interrupted the troubling line of thought, "we're receiving priority communications from Admiral Dex Korath's flagship. He's requesting a full report on the trial by combat." Vex's mood skin shifted to a sickly yellow color that indicated extreme stress. "Wonderful. How exactly do I explain to the Admiral that our most successful warlord was defeated by a single human with what amounts to an oversized bullet?" "Very carefully," Lieutenant Voss suggested. "Oh, this is going to be entertaining," Brix chittered with obvious delight. "Admiral Korath has been bragging about the superiority of Dominion military doctrine for decades. Wait until he finds out that a primitive human just made his best warrior look like an amateur." As if summoned by their conversation, Admiral Korath's image appeared on the main screen. The ancient Vraxian's cybernetic implants gleamed against his scarred carapace, and his expression suggested someone who was not in the mood for bad news. "Commander Tormund," the Admiral's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Report on the trial by combat. I trust Warlord Gorth made an appropriate example of the human prisoner?" Vex exchanged a desperate glance with his bridge crew. Lieutenant Voss offered an encouraging nod that somehow managed to convey both sympathy and the suggestion that he was entirely on his own. "Well, Admiral," Vex began, his voice cracking slightly, "the trial by combat has concluded." "Well, Admiral," Vex began, his voice cracking slightly, "the trial by combat has concluded. Warlord Gorth is currently receiving medical attention." Admiral Korath's cybernetic eye focused with mechanical precision. "Medical attention? What happened to the human?" "Actually, sir, the human is uninjured. He's currently securing his equipment and preparing for transport back to his cell." A pause. A very long pause. The kind of pause that happens when someone's brain is trying to process information that doesn't compute with their understanding of reality. Commander Tormund. Admiral Korath's voice dropped to the dangerous whisper that preceded orbital bombardments. Are you telling me that Warlord Gorth, conqueror of the Epsilon Sector, terror of the Rim Worlds, collector of 732 enemy skulls, was defeated by a single human prisoner? Yes, sir, in approximately 2.7 seconds, from a range of 3 kilometers. The Admiral's image froze, literally froze, as his cybernetic systems apparently needed a moment to process this information. When he finally moved again, his expression had shifted from authoritative confidence to something resembling existential confusion. 3 kilometers. Yes, sir. With what weapon? A projectile weapon they call a Barrett M82A1, sir. Fires .50 caliber ammunition at hypersonic velocities. Hypersonic projectiles. Admiral Korath seemed to be having trouble with basic concepts. Through our atmospheric conditions? Without guidance systems? Dr. Thorne stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overriding military protocol. Admiral, the human made manual calculations for wind drift, bullet drop, atmospheric pressure, and target velocity. All in his head, in under 30 seconds. In his head. The Admiral's voice was completely flat now. A biological brain performed ballistic calculations that would challenge our tactical computers. That's correct, sir. Humans appear to have developed these capabilities through extensive warfare on their home planet. Captain Kane mentioned something called the Martian conflict and outer colony wars. Admiral Korath's scarred face went through several expressions before settling on grim realization. Commander, how many humans were aboard the captured vessel? 47, sir, plus their ship's AI. 47. The Admiral was quiet for a moment. How many of them are combat specialists? Lieutenant Voss consulted her datapad. According to their manifest, 23 are designated as Marines, 12 as Navy personnel, 8 as Engineering Corps, and 4 as Scientific Advisory. So, roughly half of them are trained killers. Actually, sir, Dr. Thorne interjected, our psychological profiles suggest that all humans receive basic combat training regardless of their primary specialization. It appears to be a cultural requirement. The Admiral's cybernetic implants hummed ominously. All of them. Every single human on that ship is a potential combatant. Yes, sir. Though Captain Kane did mention that he was particularly specialized for long-range elimination. Most of the others are trained for what humans call close-quarters battle. Close-quarters battle, Admiral Korath repeated. And what range do humans consider close quarters? Commander Vex consulted the tactical data they'd gathered. Anywhere from physical contact to approximately 400 meters, sir. 400 meters is close quarters combat to them. Yes, sir. The Admiral was quiet for a very long time. In the background, they could hear medical reports coming in about Warlord Gorth's condition. Stable, but requiring extensive reconstructive surgery. The projectile had punched through his armor like it was made of paper, continued through his torso, and embedded itself in the ground behind him, with enough residual energy to create a small crater. Commander Tormund, Admiral Korath finally spoke. I want you to gather every piece of data we have on human military history. Combat doctrine, weapon specifications, battle records, everything. I also want detailed psychological profiles on every human aboard that vessel. Sir, our xenopsychology department has been working on human behavioral patterns since first contact. Dr. Thorne has compiled extensive research. Show me. Dr. Thorne activated the holographic display system, and suddenly the bridge was filled with charts, graphs, and tactical analyses. Admiral, humans are what we would classify as an apex predator species. Their entire evolutionary development was shaped by constant warfare, both against their environment and against each other. Elaborate. Their home planet, Earth, experienced continuous conflict for over 5,000 years of recorded history. They've fought wars with everything from sharpened sticks to thermonuclear weapons. Every technological advancement was immediately weaponized and deployed against their enemies. That's not unusual among developing species. No, sir. But humans took it to extraordinary lengths. They developed military doctrine for every conceivable combat scenario: land, sea, air, space, underground, underwater, Arctic conditions, desert warfare, jungle fighting, urban combat, siege warfare, guerrilla tactics, psychological operations. Dr. Thorne paused for breath. Admiral, they have specialized military units for situations we've never even considered. Technical specialist Blackstone pulled up additional data. Their technology tree is fascinating. While we developed energy weapons and defensive shields, humans perfected kinetic projectiles to an art form. They have ammunition designed specifically to defeat armor, to fragment upon impact, to penetrate multiple targets, to create maximum psychological effect. What do you mean, psychological effect? They have bullets designed not just to kill, but to terrorize. Ammunition that creates sounds, visual effects, even chemical reactions intended to break enemy morale. Admiral Korath's expression was growing increasingly troubled. Continue. Their Mars colonies fought a 3-year independence war against Earth. The casualty reports are significant. Over 2 million military personnel killed or wounded. The Outer Colony Wars involved 17 different star systems and lasted nearly a decade. They've been fighting interplanetary wars for decades, the Admiral said quietly. Yes, sir, and winning them. The exploration vessel we captured isn't a military ship. It's a science vessel with a standard protective escort. Captain Kane and his Marines are basically security guards. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If their security guards could take down the Dominion's best warriors, what were their actual military units capable of? Sir, Communications Officer Frost interrupted, we're receiving a transmission from the human ship. Captain Sarah Mitchell is requesting permission to speak with you directly. The human commander wants to negotiate, Admiral Korath mused. Put her through. The screen shifted to show Captain Mitchell, a middle-aged woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that suggested she'd seen more combat than most Dominion warlords. Admiral Korath, I believe we need to discuss the current situation. Captain Mitchell, I understand one of your personnel has defeated our combat champion. Captain Kane performed admirably, yes, though I should point out that this was hardly a fair contest. Admiral Korath's cybernetic eye whirred with interest. How so? Marcus is a sniper, Admiral. Asking him to engage in single combat at range is like asking a fish to swim. You played to his strengths. Captain Mitchell's expression was carefully neutral. If Warlord Gorth had chosen close-quarters combat, the outcome might have been very different. Might have been. Captain Kane is also qualified in hand-to-hand combat, blade work, and explosive ordnance disposal, but his specialty is precision elimination at extreme range. Dr. Thorne was frantically taking notes. Captain Mitchell, what exactly is Captain Kane's longest confirmed elimination? 4.3 kilometers during the siege of New Olympus. Atmospheric conditions were challenging that day. The bridge crew exchanged glances. 4.3 kilometers. Warlord Gorth never had a chance. "Captain," Admiral Korath said slowly, "what would it take for us to release you and your crew?" "Well, Admiral, that depends on what you're hoping to accomplish here. Are you planning to invade human space? Because I should warn you, that would be inadvisable." "Why?" Captain Mitchell smiled, and it wasn't a particularly pleasant expression. "Because humans don't fight wars the way you do, Admiral. We don't have honor duels or single combat. We don't respect rules of engagement that put us at a disadvantage. When humans fight, we fight to win, and we use every advantage we can get." "Meaning?" "Meaning that if the Dominion attacks human colonies, you won't face warriors like Warlord Gorth in single combat. You'll face coordinated military units with artillery support, air superiority, electronic warfare capabilities, and enough firepower to turn entire continents into glass." Admiral Korath was very quiet. "Additionally," Captain Mitchell continued conversationally, "humans have this unfortunate tendency to hold grudges. Attack one of our colonies, and every human in the galaxy becomes your enemy. We're remarkably good at coordinating large-scale military operations across multiple star systems. You're threatening us." "I'm informing you, Admiral. There's a difference." Captain Mitchell's expression softened slightly. "Look, we're not interested in conquest or domination. We're explorers, scientists, traders. But we're also survivors, and we've gotten very good at protecting ourselves over the millennia." Technical Specialist Blackstone was running calculations on her console. "Admiral, based on their ship's database, humans have colonized 47 star systems and maintain military installations in 31 of them." 31 military installations, Admiral Korath repeated. "Yes, sir. And that's just what we've been able to detect from their navigation records. There are likely more." Captain Mitchell nodded approvingly. "Very good, Specialist. Though you miss the deep space monitoring stations and the mobile defense platforms. We prefer redundancy in our defensive systems." The Admiral was looking increasingly uncomfortable with this conversation. "Captain Mitchell, what exactly are you proposing?" "A mutual non-aggression pact. You don't attack human space. We don't demonstrate why that would be a terrible idea. Everyone goes home happy, and maybe we can work out some trade agreements that benefit both our civilizations." "And if we refuse?" Captain Mitchell's smile returned. "Then you'll discover why Captain Kane is considered one of our less aggressive military specialists." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems and the distant sounds of medical teams still working on Warlord Gorth. "Admiral," Dr. Thorne said quietly, "I recommend we accept their proposal. Our tactical analysis suggests that humans represent a significantly greater military threat than we initially assessed." Admiral Korath studied the data scrolling across his screens. Ship manifests, weapon specifications, battle records, population data. The humans weren't just another species to be conquered and absorbed into the Dominion. They were a peer-level civilization with military capabilities that matched or exceeded their own. "Captain Mitchell," the Admiral said finally, "I believe we can arrange suitable terms for your release. Perhaps we should discuss this further." "I'd be happy to, Admiral. Though I should mention, Captain Kane sends his regards to Warlord Gorth. He hopes there are no hard feelings about the trial by combat." "I'm sure the Warlord will appreciate the sentiment when he regains consciousness." As the transmission ended, Commander Vex looked around his bridge crew. "Well, that was, educational." "That's one word for it," Lieutenant Voss agreed. "I don't think I'll ever look at humans the same way again." "Sir," Tactical Officer Nomak chittered with obvious amusement. Should I file a report recommending that all future human encounters be classified as potentially hazardous? Make it extremely hazardous, Vex replied, and add a note that their definition of primitive weapons apparently differs significantly from ours. Dr. Thorne was still reviewing the combat data. You know, this entire incident raises fascinating questions about technological development paths. We assumed that any advanced civilization would naturally progress through the same stages we did. But humans took a completely different approach. Different how? We focused on energy manipulation, defensive systems, and overwhelming firepower. Humans focused on precision, adaptability, and psychological warfare. They didn't just develop better weapons, they developed better ways of thinking about conflict itself. Technical specialist Blackstone nodded agreement. Their tactical doctrine emphasizes speed, surprise, and surgical precision over brute force. It's actually remarkably efficient. Efficient enough to defeat our best warrior with a single shot from 3 kilometers away, Lieutenant Voss observed dryly. Speaking of which, Communications Officer Frost announced, medical reports indicate that Warlord Gorth is stable and conscious. He's asking to speak with Captain Kane. Commander Vex's mood skin shifted to an alarmed shade of yellow. He wants to what? Apparently he's requesting a private conversation with the human who defeated him. That seems like a very bad idea. Actually, Dr. Thorne interjected, it might provide valuable insights into human post-combat behavior. How do they treat defeated enemies? Do they show mercy or dominance? The only way to find out is to ask them, Vex decided. Open a channel to Captain Kane. Captain Kane appeared on screen, still completely calm and professional. Commander Tormund, I understand Warlord Gorth wants to speak with me. Yes, Captain. Are you willing to have that conversation? Kane shrugged. Sure. He fought with honor, even if his tactics were questionable. I respect that. You respect the warrior who was trying to kill you 30 minutes ago? Of course. Gorth is a professional soldier, same as me. We were on opposite sides, but that doesn't mean I can't appreciate his dedication. Kane paused. Besides, I'm curious about his combat experience. Anyone who survives 700 battles knows something worth learning. And there it was. The thing that made humans truly dangerous wasn't their weapons or their tactics or their technology. It was their attitude. They treated warfare like a profession, defeat like a learning opportunity, and enemies like colleagues in the same deadly business. Put the Warlord through, Vex said quietly. Warlord Gorth appeared on a split screen, heavily bandaged but conscious. Human Kane, you fight with great skill. Thank you, Warlord. You're tougher than most targets I've engaged. Anyone else would have been killed instantly by that impact. Your weapon is formidable. I have never faced such precision at such range. Different worlds, different approaches to warfare. Your close combat skills are impressive. In hand-to-hand fighting, you'd probably take me apart. Gorth made a sound that might have been laughter. Perhaps we shall test that theory when I recover. I'd be honored to spar with you, Warlord, though maybe with training weapons next time. Training weapons, Gorth agreed. I am curious about your techniques. And just like that, the most feared warrior in the Dominion and the human who'd defeated him were discussing future training sessions like old friends planning a workout. This is surreal, Lieutenant Voss whispered. This is humans, Dr. Thorne corrected. They compartmentalize conflict in ways we never considered. Today, Kane was a deadly enemy. Tomorrow he could be a valued ally. They don't let past battles interfere with present opportunities. As the conversation between Kane and Gorth continued, Admiral Korath's image reappeared on the main screen. Commander Tormund, prepare to release the human vessel and crew. I've authorized a full diplomatic exchange and preliminary trade negotiations. Yes, sir. Should I file this incident as a diplomatic success? File it as a wake-up call, Commander. We've spent decades assuming we were the dominant military power in this galaxy. Today we learned that assumption might be fatally flawed. The Admiral's image faded, leaving the bridge crew to contemplate the implications of the day's events. In the space of a few hours, their entire understanding of human capabilities had been shattered and rebuilt. Sir, Communications Officer Frost announced, Captain Mitchell is requesting permission to retrieve Captain Kane and return to their ship. Granted. And Frost, send them our compliments on a well-fought engagement. As the human shuttle departed with Captain Kane aboard, Commander Vex looked around his bridge one final time. Well, crew, what did we learn today? Never underestimate humans, Lieutenant Voss said immediately. Always respect kinetic weapons, added Technical Specialist Blackstone. 3 kilometers is apparently not an impossible range, Tactical Officer Nomak chittered. Humans make dangerous enemies and potentially valuable allies, Dr. Thorne concluded. Commander Vex nodded approvingly. All correct. And one more thing. Sometimes the most advanced military doctrine is the one that gets the job done with the least fuss. As the human ship departed Dominion space, carrying news of their encounter back to human command, the crew of the Devourer's Pride settled in to write their reports. Somewhere in the medical bay, Warlord Gorth was already planning training modifications based on his brief but educational encounter with human marksmanship. And in the cold depths of space, 2 civilizations had taken their first step toward understanding that they had more to gain as allies than enemies. 1 human, 1 shot, 3 kilometers. It would become legend in both cultures, though for very different reasons.